being here. And then we're rolling out some sessions around graduates and apprentices focused on the bid world and the bid industry. So if any of you have any graduates or apprentices at your business at the moment, or you know of any people that are interested in getting into the wonderful world of bids, then definitely this is going to be the place to be over the next couple of months. We're also going to be talking to some leading people when it comes to procurement and how they work with bid teams. So as I said, we've got Adam joined us from EY, who's the Pursuits Manager. So Adam, I'm going to pass over to you really. Are you all right to give us a guide through of where it all started in your career? That would be fantastic.
Thanks very much, Raquel, and good afternoon to everybody on the call. So yeah, just to kick off with my background, I essentially fell into bidding completely by mistake, the same as lots of other people. So initially I'd started off and I was on Lidl's graduate management scheme, but after around 7 months there, I decided that I completely hated it. And I had a friend working for a small charity who told me about a job opening as a bid writer. So, I didn't know anything about bidding, but decided to go for it and somehow managed to get the job. And I remember when I started at this small charity, this was kind of back in the early 2010 sort of time. And I used to write bid responses and print them off and then go and walk into the marketing director's office, put it on her desk, and then she'd basically return them a few minutes later, covered in red pen. And I used to see it as a bit of a challenge at that particular point in time to try and submit copy and see if I could get it back without any red pen on it. But that was a really good start to the career, and in hindsight, actually taught me quite a lot. But then after that, essentially stayed there for around a year or so, and then I moved to a small software company, which was about 10 minutes from my house, so it was perfect. And I then convinced them to hire me as their first ever bid writer again. So when I got there, I also got a bit lucky again. I managed to win their first bid, which was to Cornwall Council. And I remember after I did that, they then told me, oh, good job on that bid. Well done. It means you can stay now. And I sort of thought, oh my word, does that mean that potentially I was going to lose my job had we not won it? But yeah, I had a really successful period there, and we were competing with the large IT companies at the time, but we started to win a lot of bids. I remember we won 7 bids in a row once, which was unprecedented. Wow. And it actually led to an investigation from the Competition and Markets Authority at the time, which was a bit crazy, but showed that we were doing really well. Then again, in this particular company, got quite lucky, got a few promotions to bid manager and then group bid manager. And I was basically like pitching to local councils. I was working all night long on bids, as I know some of you probably know that feeling well. And I was just having a great time and learning quite a lot. And this was kind of in my mid-20s. Then after that, basically one day, the RAC's recruitment department got in touch and they told me about a bid manager job that was there. So obviously, big company and everything, I decided to go for it. Then it was a small bid team at that company. They had 3 bid managers, and within a couple of months of joining, 3 months, another person in their bid team handed in their notice. So I was asked essentially, do I want to apply for the job to run the team, even though I'd only been there for 3 months myself. So I kind of went for it at the time. To be honest, wasn't really ready, but luckily managed to get the job. And that's when I had to learn really fast to lead a team and also to work on much bigger bids. So the RAC's bids are typically between 10 million and 8 million. To provide roadside assistance to large companies, motor manufacturers, and banks, etc. But the RAC is kind of where it all really kicked off for me. I won a couple of awards. I got onto the Strategic Proposals Rising Stars program. I won an award at the RAC. We won a few kind of mega deals, as we called them, big 75 million plus deals with motor manufacturers. And I also did my APMP foundation at that point, where I started to really understand what best practice was. Then after that, things were going really well, but EY got in touch again, and there was an opportunity for a bid manager there, so I went for it and managed to get it. essentially, when I joined, I thought there's not really much left to learn in bidding. I've already been doing it for about 8 years now. So, this job should be easy because I'm not going to be leading a team. I'm just going to be a bid manager at EY. And reality is I couldn't have been more wrong about that. And it was a huge learning curve and a big jump. But essentially, kind of first 2 years, just did the job, settled in and everything like that. Then after 2 years, I started to lead an offshore bid team, basically based in India, of 10 people. That went really well for the last year, and more recently, now in the last 4 months, I've been kind of promoted again, if you like, and now I'm leading 6 teams, all India based, providing support to our business development services. So I oversee now about 60 people, and I also do that alongside my bidding job. And my bidding job's changed as well. So I'm kind of less involved in the day-to-day bid management stuff, and I'm much more into a kind of advisory role and a strategic role to help our partners win our biggest opportunities. So yeah, overall, it's been a bit of a crazy journey. I wouldn't have ever expected when I started this tiny bidding job, not really knowing much about bidding, that I'd end up to where I am now and do what I am about 10 years later. But it's been a great journey. I've really enjoyed it along the way.
It's been an exciting journey, I think, when you listen to it and how far you've come, and you've had to diversify as a person, really, and you've had to grow and develop and change things. I mean, you've worked in various environments and industries as well to chuck that in as a different challenge. You haven't stayed within the same bracket. How have you adapted to the changes throughout your career, working with these different companies and different industries?
It's a good question. I think from a career perspective, what I realised is when I moved early a few times in my career between the charity sector, then to the IT sector, and then to the motoring sector, I realised that it doesn't really matter what sort of company or industry that you work within, and the process of bidding to win essentially remains consistent throughout all of these different companies and industries. You still need to package up your solution to meet the client's needs. You still need to prove that you're different and better from the competition, and you still need to sell the benefits of the service as well. So that all stays the same. But I think I realised that it takes about 6 to 12 months to get to know a new company and the different lingo and the products and services that you're selling. But really, the process is learnable. So to me, to stay in one industry or one particular role, it doesn't really make any sense, because every time that I've moved into a new role or a new industry, that's actually accelerated my learning much quicker than it would have been if I'd stayed in the same place and tried to do the same things.
Yeah, I get, and you're right. And I know this is one thing, like you always say this when we've had pre-interview meetings, that the fundamentals of bids are exactly the same. It's selling people rather than service. I guess that's the big thing, isn't it? And you started off for a local charity, and you explain it like it was a really small, close-knit charity, and you've ended up working for one of the leading employers in like the world. I mean, to give people out there a bit of an insight of what it's like stepping up, how did you jump to a global company, and how did it work for you, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think the important point to make here is that I didn't kind of make a jump from a small charity that had 100 members of staff to like a company with 300,000 staff overnight. I basically jumped between a company to a slightly bigger company to a kind of well-known corporate, the RAC, and then to EY. So I was making a progression every time, but the jumps themselves in the companies made that a bit more possible. But in terms of when I joined EY, I think I kind of alluded to it at the beginning and saying that it was actually much harder than I thought. When I first joined the team, I remember the kind of UK bid team that I still work within now. My first impressions of their team meetings were there was like a lot of debate. People, were having kind of highly intellectual, high level conversations, and obviously as a newcomer, I was starting to get imposter syndrome. You think like, oh wow, these people are really clever. Am I as clever as them? Am I going to fit in here? This could be really difficult. But essentially, over time you begin to find your feet, and then you get more confident, and you start to think, well, actually, I'm not. I'm just as good as these people, and with as much experience as they've had at the company, then I'm going to be just as good as they are. So now, like within a few years later, that's proving to be true, and I'm getting these new opportunities to lead teams and get promoted and things like this. So the hard work's really starting to pay off. But I think my kind of advice to anyone that's looking to progress their career and move between roles is, don't expect it to be really fast, and don't expect it to be easy. You need to be realistic, and kind of give yourself the opportunity to learn and get comfortable with things.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, isn't it? And I guess in the bid world, things do change. They do stay the same. The fundamentals, like we've said before, are very, very similar. But when we've spoken, I know your approach to bids. You have a bit of a different way of running with bids, don't you? I mean, could you let us know a bit more about how you tackle that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, I mean, at EY at the moment, we like onshore in our kind of UK team, we structured it in the same way that lots of other bid teams are in other companies. So, we have a bid manager and a bid leader and an opportunity. But I think one of the things that makes us different, especially to some of the firms I've worked for in the past, is our offshore teams, and they're really our secret weapon. So essentially, EY hire really bright and highly qualified individuals, typically that have master's degrees from India's top universities, as well as other locations in the world like Manila, Poland, and a few others. But in terms of the India teams, they provide support to lots of different activities throughout our bid and proposal process. So they help us with things like RFP analysis, project planning, researching clients, coordinating the bids. And all of these different things that they help us with essentially allows people such as myself to make much more rapid progress against the bid, but also to provide more strategic support to the business and the bid as well. So if I've got people supporting me that are thinking about the project management and coordination and making sure all those bits are going well, that allows me more time to focus on the value proposition, the win themes, planning for client meetings, making sure that we're asking them the right questions, planning for our pitches to the client early on, even when we're still writing the proposal document itself. So yeah, it's a massive benefit in the way that we work, and the offshore teams really work as a fully integrated part of our team. And yeah, they really sit side by side us every day. So lots of advantages.
Because I think, do you know what? There's some people probably that's on this call that work in a bid environment, and the thought of having offshore teams potentially could scare the life out of people. Because I know bid teams are very focused, they're very integrated, they work very well. And it sounds like you guys are really leading the way with how you approach bids and definitely your projects that you're aiming to win. I mean, where do you see the bid world going towards? And what would you like to see change in the future?
I think again, it's a good question. If we look at where the bid world's going, a lot of the time people always tend to talk about technology, and they see it as a silver bullet within bids and proposals that's going to solve all of the problems and make the old world of bidding obsolete. But in reality, what I've seen is I've seen bids with videos, I've seen bids done on websites and microsites, interactive PDF bids, which are becoming pretty mainstream. I've even seen a bid with like a soundtrack and immersive moving artwork as you go through it, so the pictures are moving and there's a bit of music happening. But the reality is that even though we have these cool innovations in bids, none of them ever really seem to stick and become the standard and the thing that people do every time they've got a bid. Typically, these are more seen when people are looking to do something extra special for a client that like is a must win, and even then, it can seem a little bit gimmicky. So for me, in terms of where bids are going and what we should be doing, I think the key thing is to go back to basics, and that typically means three different things. So firstly, back to basics is obviously truly understanding what the client really wants and how your proposition as the bidder is going to help to meet those requirements. And I think a lot of people are often fooled and think that what the client really wants is what's written in the RFP, when in fact that's not true at all. What they really want is the stuff that's not written down. But secondly, I think the key thing of being back to basics is understanding your firm's offer and how that's different to the competitions and better to the competitions. So in order to know this, you really obviously need to know what are your competition offering, and you need to get that sort of information from the win-loss reviews that you're doing with your clients after you've submitted a bid. But thirdly, I think another key back to basics thing for me is understanding the difference between features and benefits. So a lot of kind of less experienced companies will tend to confuse features and benefits and kind of lead with a feature-led proposition. But really, if you want to convince the client to pick your offer, you need to make sure that you're challenging themselves to lead to what are the ultimate benefits that are delivered from the features that you've got, and that make it a good reason for that client to choose you. The other thing that's really key is, when we kind of bid in at the big four level at the moment, we're obviously competing against other companies that are providing similar products and services at a high level as well. So what becomes really important is like the war for information advantages. And what I mean by that is exploring information about like who knows who at the client, what experiences have those people had of our company in the past, what experience have they had of our competitors, how do the key decision makers that are going to make a choice on the bid, what do they actually think of us and what do they perceive of us, and how can we change their perceptions and how can we help to influence them so that they see us in a more positive light. But just to summarize on that, then I think EY spend a lot more time basically researching, analyzing information and trying to find these competitive advantages. And we do that by trying to ask our clients the right questions, so that we can build stronger value propositions. So that's it in kind of like the future of bidding and what I think is important. But if I now look to answer the second part of your question, which is like, what would I like to see in future? Yeah. I wouldn't like to see changes necessarily in bidding. I'd like to see changes in procurement. So I think people that work in the bid industry are sick and tired of writing long proposals, just as sick as the people who are asking for them are of reading them. So I'd like to see, procurement people asking for more concise information, more focused information. And I'd like to also see them become a lot more open, especially in the government and public sector, to interaction with bidders and to get them to help shape the RFP and solution. And I think if they did that, they'd see much better results. But ultimately, I mean, the number one thing on my wish list, same as everyone else in bidding, is no more bids across the Christmas period, because that makes us really sick when you say, I'll have it in on the 1st of January. It's like, thanks very much, you've just ruined Christmas.
Listen, it's never going to happen. We always think at Hobs that we're going to go, there's going to be a lull on the run up to Christmas. And then you get that dreaded phone call the day before Christmas Eve where someone's got to go and do something and they've got a hand in. It's never going to change. You can ask that for Santa this year, Adam, but I can't see it changing. I think the bid world just goes manic and there isn't a lull, is there? You guys never have a break. And I think that's a big thing. And like you've said, you've worked in various roles for totally different businesses. You've gone from 100-person company to now working for over 300,000 that you just said staff worldwide. EY have monstrous. I mean, what are the things do you think that stay the same regardless from the very beginning of your career to now? And what differences have you found working for that size organisation? I guess the Christmas Eve and the January bid submissions, they still happen even at EY.
Yeah, I mean they do, but I mean we're quite lucky really, because we're fortunate with the amount of resources that we've got, and then the size of our teams. But I mean, in terms of what stays the same, the client, obviously, irrespective of the company that you work for or the industry or the role that you're doing, the client still needs to purchase something. They've still got objectives that they want to meet through the successful bidder. They've still got pain points that need to be addressed. And the bidder still needs to basically do everything within their power to convince the client why should we choose your firm and not the competition's. But in terms of what's different, and this is quite a big difference, I think when I was at other companies, up to and including the RAC, which is obviously a big company bidding for big business in its own right, we used to spend a lot of time focusing on the bid and proposal documents, and it was all about the tender response and what we actually put down on paper. But when we look at our reasons for winning and losing, and we ask our clients, like, why did you choose EY this time, and or why didn't you choose EY this time? what we've found out is typically they tend to respond with choosing the successful bidder on how much they liked our people and our team, how much did they gel with our particular culture, and how did that meet their culture, and how well did we really understand them and their business. So, and how much does our proposition meet what they want? So the key difference when we're bidding in this environment is we actually spend much more time thinking about what the client wants, thinking about what individual stakeholders want, investing time in asking them the questions, so that we can build a solution that is right for them and is the most compelling offer. And what that essentially means is we'd rather submit a proposal we'd rather spend loads of time up front making sure that our offer is absolutely right for the client and it's based on what they want and need. And then a short time on the proposal document, which means the proposal document's not perfect, than we would to write a perfect proposal document that's beautifully worded, but doesn't address the fundamentals of what they want. So our kind of mindset really has shifts compared to other places that have worked, and that's a massive difference.
Well, yeah, I think that's a big thing. I think sometimes, and I was talking obviously off the back of this Morgan Sindel event that I've attended over the last couple of days, and I spoke to a lovely chap, and he said exactly the same. Sometimes it's easy to miss the point of a bid, and you've got a proven track record when it comes to winning work. You've done it at every business that you've worked at, which is fantastic. I mean, what do you think is kind of like the secret sauce to winning work, irrespective of the environment that you're in, or I guess the economy's in, because we've just come out of a pandemic, haven't we? Well, we're coming out of a pandemic, should I say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I'm about to say next, probably alongside a lot of the other stuff I've said, isn't going to be new news to anyone that's working in business development or anyone that's working in a strategic bidding role. Um, but for me, the key secret sauce, if you like, to winning work is asking the client the right questions. So just to example that, the sort of questions that we tend to ask our clients or prospective clients is, if we were going to, and this is before a bid comes out, if it's best practice, but we'd say, like, if we're having this meeting in a year's time, what would good look like to you, and what would a successful year, what would characterize a successful year, and what would failure look like? And then, we'd also ask them questions. What do you love about your incumbent today? What are the bits that you really need to keep? And what frustrates you about what they do? What don't you like? Or we might ask some questions and say, if you had a magic wand and you could solve any problem within your business, or we could help you to solve any problem, what would it be and why? And we ask, those are just a couple of examples, and there's lots more questions that you can ask, but we tend to ask questions like this to try and get that information advantages about what they want, and we use that information. We listen really carefully to build the offer. So it's not rocket science, and it sounds like common sense, but it's definitely really about asking the right questions. My only kind of caveat to that is I understand a lot of people work in public sector bidding, and they obviously, send out a tender, shut down the doors, and say, you can't talk to us again for a couple of months, but we'll see you at the pitch. Good luck. I think when you're in those situations, and EY obviously bids to the government and public sector as well, the focus does again become on the document more, and it's less easy to get what people want. But I think in those instances, there are still opportunities to before, if you really planning ahead before the bid comes out, to try and learn what they want and get in touch. Or another thing that typically works a lot in the public sector is evidencing the previous work that you've done with them and building a good business to business relationship with those government departments to try and leverage that.
I think you face a lot of challenges, don't you, with those clients that engage. You submit your first letter of intent, if that's what you want to call it, and then it's a case of, like you said, we'll catch you up and we'll see you in a few months. How do you keep that contact and that relationship going? It's a huge challenge, isn't it? Adam, what's the biggest challenge that you've faced in your career?
I think there's been a few challenges, but if I pick just one, it was something that's completely unrelated to bidding at all. So when COVID first hit in March of 2020, essentially I took a call from the head of UK business development at EY, and she essentially said to me, Adam, I've heard you've got some of the best project management skills within the UK business. So would you be interested in leading a response team to COVID-19? So at the time, you don't say no basically to the head of BD for the UK. So I said, yeah, absolutely, it'd be great to do that.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought that I'd be leading a team of maybe about like 20 people, just like a little war room. Within about a day, I'd realised that I was being asked to lead the UK business's entire response to COVID-19, and that was leading a war room with about 150 people in.
Wow.
And we were basically like coordinating the marketing, our webinars, our responses to clients, like internal materials, solving questions. There was just a huge volume and speed and amount of work that was happening, and I was sort of stuck in the center of it, trying to bring some organizations to the chaos. But I mean, for me, that really taught me some new skills, because I used to go to meetings really prepared and I'd plan out everything before a meeting. But suddenly, when you're coordinating a war room of this number of people, you realize you can't prepare for anything. You don't have any time for preparation anymore. So you need to make things up on the spot, and you need to improvise. So that was kind of like the making of me at EY, to be honest, and that really, really accelerated my capability and what I could do with the teams I was working with.
Yeah, I think it's strange, isn't it? And there's a lot of some of my managers are on here and my directors are on here as well. And COVID-19, when it hit, probably every single person on this call had to really take a breath, take a step back, reevaluate what they were doing, and then attack it head on. Because I was one of the naiveties that when we came into it, it'll last for 3 weeks, it'll be fine, we'll all be okay. No, we're still here, and we're over 18 months in it. And I guess it's nice to hear that you've grown and you've developed, even when you were comfortable in your role for a year or two, that you've still been chucked a bit of a curveball from EY and managed to develop and progress, which is really, really refreshing to hear. And it's nice to hear that something's actually paid off the back of it. I mean, kind of to tie it up, there's going to be people on this call that could potentially be starting out their career in bidding. I mean, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in the bidding industry now?
I think for me, the key advice would be, even if you're working as a bid writer or a bid coordinator, or any particular siloed role within a bid department, it's easy to think that your career is limited, and it's like, I'm just a bid writer or just a bid coordinator or whatever it is. Or you might be working in an organization where you're the main bid person, or there's only a couple of main bid people, and you've got a huge amount of responsibility, and sometimes you can be underappreciated, I guess. And a lot of the brilliant work that you do just happens late at night when you're trying to work on your bids and proposals. But I think my kind of key advice would be that it couldn't be further from the truth, and there are actually massive opportunities within bidding, and you can move between roles, you can move to different companies, you can do the sort of thing that I'm doing now, where I'm leading these 6 teams, but that's nothing to do with bidding at all. But all of the skills that I've developed over my career so far are now coming into practice, that are allowing me to lead teams and just organise things from an operational point of view. So I think the key thing is, if you take on projects that you're not always ready for, or you move into roles maybe that you're not always ready for, that can, or you kind of put your hand up for new opportunities, that can actually accelerate your skill set much faster and make you much happier as a result. So I'd encourage people who are kind of cruising and quite happy at the moment to really kind of stretch themselves and see what else they could do, because I think they, if they're like me, they'd be surprised where it takes them.
I absolutely love that. And I'm pretty sure that our directors probably paid you off for saying that as well. I'm joking. So, Adam, you've been so fantastic, considering that you haven't been very well as well. You coped really, really well, and there wasn't one cough either.
Yeah, I am dying to cough at the moment, to be honest. I managed to pick up COVID-19 somehow. I still don't know how, and tested positive on Saturday, but luckily I've got no symptoms really, so feeling pretty good.
Adam,
yeah.
you knocked it out of the park. You were so good. And we're going into a Q&A now. So we're opening the questions up, and I know I've already got one to kick you off. So, Jubin, I hope that's how you pronounce your name. We've got a question. So, Adam, how is the global nature of bids affected by the bid process? Say, if we've got people from various countries to collaborate with. So, I think that's around how do you bring your team together, and I guess probably the outbreak of COVID-19 being at different speeds and paces.
It's a great question. I think for me, obviously at EY we work as one global organisation, and we really do see ourselves as one team. We don't see ourselves as kind of UK, India, and India, UK business, India business, etc. I think the key really is to collaborate with teams in the same way that you normally would with teams onshore, and that's become the norm now. I think COVID's opened up massive opportunities for businesses to work in a different way, and especially work across borders much more seamlessly than before. So typically, if we looked at how pre-COVID, how we used to manage our bids, we still had offshore support for them, but it was hard because we might have been in a meeting room physically in person, and we might have had people from offshore dialing in on the phone, and they couldn't necessarily always hear or understand what was happening because there's these side conversations that are not picked up on the conference phone. I think now that's completely changed, and what we're looking to do is still do face-to-face meetings essentially when it justifies that. So if we want to talk about the clients and their problems, but manage a lot of the other more operational parts of the bid in a virtual manner, even if we could meet up in person. But culturally as well, I think we're quite lucky that our global culture means that I've worked with people in India, in Brazil, in China, in the US on bids, and essentially I can just email someone in the US now or in China and say, can I call you tomorrow and just talk about this? And people are willing to take that call. So it's a cultural thing with the business really, and I'd encourage businesses with to think at their overall strategy level about how they can bring a one team global culture together. And when firms do that, it's the power of it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a massive achievement as well for EY, considering how many people you've got over such a vast distance around the world, and so many different countries, with languages being a problem for a lot of people, the language barrier, the time differences, which are always wonderful for different countries as well. So I think you guys tend to have knocked it out of the park, and if it works well for you, I think it's great.
The time differences can be utilized for an advantage, to be honest. I know a lot of companies do follow the sun essentially. So I know typically if I'm working on something, India will come online a lot earlier than us, so they could I could maybe be working late into the evening, send some work over, and then they could be working on it in the morning, so that by the time that I start at 9 o'clock, our bids move forwards, and that's a big benefit. I know a lot of companies that have got US and UK functions do the same thing, but unfortunately, typically the people in the UK get a bit of a rougher deal, to be honest, than the US people on that. But it can be a good thing.
Yeah, fab. Thank you, Adam. So we're actually doing well on questions. So we've got Marlene has asked a question saying, and I'd love to hear your response on this. Would you say winning is everything when it comes to bids?
I think for me, it's winning isn't always possible, but if you want to win more often, I think it's important to have a winning mindset. So typically, when I'm working on a bid or one of my colleagues is at EY, we will we'll try and challenge ourselves to make sure that every single action that we do is on the critical path to helping us win. And if it's not on that critical path to helping us win, then why are we doing it? So it's we're trying to make marginal gains sometimes throughout the process, make sure that one client meeting's slightly better than it would have been, or our pitch, our presentation slightly better than it would have been. And sometimes you winning the bid is the sum of lots of little gains that you've had over a long process that eventually puts you ahead in the end. So to me, it is everything, but you can't win every bid really, and sometimes you could do the best bid or proposal in the world, and you could have done everything absolutely perfect by the playbook, and you might lose because the client, has a good relationship with one of your competitors, or they've worked with them in the past, and they find it easier to trust that company because they know what they're going to get. So it's not always a perfect world, but we try and make those marginal gains to put us in a better position.
I know that you're extremely competitive with what you do, and I know that you're very, very focused as well. And then we've got a question from Kia, who says, from your offshore unit of experts, how do you choose the right person for the right task, Adam?
It's a really good question. I mean, in terms of choosing the right people, that's something that I actually spend quite a lot of time doing. So over the past couple of weeks, I've been doing a lot of interviews with our offshore teams to bring the right people in. In terms of that, it's the same sort of things that you'd be doing if you were employing someone in the UK. We're looking for people not only with the right capability and skill set, but also the right attitude and the right culture and work ethic, and people that will fit into our teams well, and it's the right place for them and their career and their development as it is for us as well. But in terms of how we select the right activities for them, when we started this offshore journey a couple of years, a good few years back, before I joined DY, we essentially would train people up to be really good at repeatable activities that are really well defined. So we could say, well, we've got these 30 activities and we're going to train you to do it, and you become perfect at doing these repeatable processes. That's really good to give you consistency, but that actually becomes a limitation in the higher value things that person's able to do, because everything's by the rule book. What we're trying to do now is actually give our offshore teams more autonomy, more freedom, and more ambiguity in terms of the things that they're working on, so that they can actually learn higher level skills and provide more value to the business. And that's again not something that happens overnight. It's definitely a journey, but we're finding that by investing in our people and treating everyone the same, irrespective of where you're sitting in the world, then we actually see much better returns from that, and the kind of development path is well worth it for us in the long run, and the value that we get back.
So that's great. It's really knowing who your stars of the team are and what they can do, and what they like doing as well. That's a big thing, isn't it? Because people have got to like their job and feel that they're getting somewhere.
Yeah, we definitely we invest really heavily in our people, and every single person's on a learning and development journey, if you like, to try and allow them to bring more value to the business, and that's no different for our offshore teams as it is to our onshore teams.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Adam. So we've answered some of the questions. Has anyone else got any questions that they'd like to put to Adam while we've got him? I can't see any hands being raised, but thank you, Adam. You've been so brilliant today, especially when you haven't been very well. I don't know how you've managed to do it, but you've knocked it out of the park. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, and thank you for everyone for joining in and logging in and showing us a bit of support, especially during the last few weeks that we've had the interview process. We are going to be announcing our latest term. So we're trying to run it like a school term. So we're going to have a week off. We're all going to have a bit of a rest and hit the pub, I reckon, next week. And then we've got a couple of weeks where we're going to be announcing, like I said at the start of the call, we've got a focus on graduates and apprentices. We also have a lovely chap joining us, talking and discussing all things procurement and how do we work with bid teams and integrate them two together. So we've popped on a link into our web chat, which is the bottom right-hand corner. It's a little LinkedIn group for those of you that aren't a member. It's called Use These Better, and we have hints and tips for all things bid related. But thank you again for taking the time out of your day, and hopefully we'll see you all again soon. So have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks, Raquel.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very much, all.